All right, so today we're going all in on a story that might just make you want to hold your cards a little tighter next time you're at the casino. We're talking about a casino dealer in Cleveland accused of skimming chips right off the poker table.
Oh, wow. That takes some serious guts considering the security you usually find in a casino.
No kidding. So for this deep dive, we've got two news articles, one from AP News and one from WFMJ.com. And there's this other little snippet that looks like it's also from AP. Anyway, so this former poker dealer, he's 51 years old, and he worked at the Jack Cleveland Casino, and he's facing charges for allegedly stealing chips from the pot. And get this, not just once. We're talking at least 14 times.
14 times.
At least that's what they're saying. And it supposedly happened between early August and September of this year.
Whoa, that's not just a slip-up. That sounds like a pattern. And what's really interesting here is that the Ohio Casino Control Commission is involved.
Oh, yeah, they don't mess around.
No, they don't. This isn't just an internal casino matter.
Right. They're the ones who regulate all the casinos in Ohio, and they're the ones who investigate any crimes that happen there.
Exactly. And they have a lot of power to make sure everything's above board. So their involvement definitely means this is serious stuff.
Okay, but here's the thing. The articles don't actually say how much money was supposedly stolen. Pretty big detail to leave out, don't you think?
It is curious. Maybe they're still adding it all up, especially if it was happening little by little over lots of hands. Or maybe they don't want to sway public opinion or mess with the investigation.
Yeah, maybe. It definitely adds to the intrigue. But okay, let's back up for a sec and go through what we know about how this all went down. So according to what we've got, it all started with a poker player who actually accused the dealer of stealing during a game back in September.
So a player called him out right then and there.
Seems like it.
They must have been pretty sure to make that kind of accusation.
I know, right? And to the casino's credit, they took it seriously enough to review the security footage. And what you know, they found even more instances of the alleged theft.
Not surprising. Casinos take security very seriously. They've got cameras everywhere.
Yeah, so they fired the dealer right away, and now he's facing these charges.
Well, yeah, that's pretty standard procedure in these situations. They have to investigate thoroughly, and if they find evidence, well, they got to act on it.
So he pled not guilty on November 15th, and he's due back in court in early December. The articles also mention that they tried to reach the former dealer's attorney for a comment, but they didn't get a response.
That's interesting. It's not unusual for lawyers to stay quiet early on, especially when the investigation is still going.
Right. They might be waiting to see how things play out.
Exactly.
Right.
They don't want to say anything that could be used against their client.
So we've got a dealer accused of stealing a casino that seems to have caught him thanks to their security system, and a lawyer who's playing it close to the vest. What does all this tell you about the world of casino security?
Well, it really shows just how much casinos have to worry about when it comes to keeping things secure. They've got to prevent cheating players, stop organized crime, and make sure their own employees are honest. It's a huge job.
Yeah. I mean, they have all those cameras, right? And the pit bosses.
Oh, yeah. They've got all the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
But it's not just about the technology. They need strong internal controls, too. Things like background checks for employees, regular audits of the games. And they need to train their employees really well and make sure they know all the rules and regulations.
So there's a whole lot happening behind the scenes that we as players never see.
Exactly.
It's kind of ironic. They want you to feel like you're in this glamorous, exciting world, but at the same time, they have to be constantly on guard against anyone trying to cheat the system.
It's a delicate balance, for sure.
But here's the thing that really gets me. If someone who works there can potentially steal from under their noses, what does that mean for the average player?
That's the million-dollar question, and one we should definitely explore further.
Yeah, it does make you wonder how often this kind of thing slips through the cracks.
Right. And that brings us to the charges this guy's facing. Violating casino gaming laws, which is probably a felony, and then misdemeanor theft. What are we talking about here in terms of consequences?
Well, violating casino gaming laws is a big no-no. It's not just about bending the rules a little. We're talking about potentially undermining the whole system. That kind of thing can lead to some pretty hefty fines, probation, or even jail time.
Jail time? For stealing some chips? That seems kind of extreme.
It might seem that way, but casinos are heavily regulated for a reason. The whole industry depends on maintaining public trust, making sure the games are fair.
So they have to make an example out of them.
Basically.
Yeah.
It's about deterring others from doing the same thing and protecting the reputation of the casino and the whole industry. And don't forget about that misdemeanor theft charge. Even though it's not as serious as the felony, it could still mean fines or even a short jail sentence. Okay, so this guy's in some serious trouble. But what about the casino? This has got to be a PR nightmare for them.
Oh, for sure. There's always a risk of damage to their reputation in a situation like this. But it seems like they acted quickly and decisively. They investigated, fired the employee, and cooperated with the authorities.
So they're trying to do damage control.
Exactly. And that kind of transparency can go a long way.
Still, though, this kind of story makes you wonder, how can you ever be sure a casino game is really on the up and up?
I think it's important to remember that instances like this are pretty rare. Casinos put a lot of money and effort into security measures to protect their games and their customers. And the vast majority of casino employees are honest, hardworking people.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
So the odds of something like this happening are pretty slim.
Okay, but it's still a little unnerving to think that someone could be manipulating the games without anyone knowing. What would you say to someone who's feeling a bit uneasy about all this?
I'd say it's always good to be an informed and aware player. Pay attention to the game, know the rules, and if you see something that seems fishy, don't be afraid to report it to the staff.
Good advice. It's like anything else in life. You got to be careful and use common sense, even when you're in a place that's supposed to be all about fun and entertainment.
Exactly. And this case might actually lead to even tighter security measures in casinos. We might see more advanced surveillance technology, more rigorous employee screening, even changes to how the games are run.
So this could end up being a good thing for the industry in the long run.
It's definitely possible. The industry is always evolving, and events like this often force them to step up their game.
That's a good point. So we've talked about the casino's perspective, the legal ramifications for the dealer, and even what players can do to protect themselves. But there's another angle here that I think is worth exploring, the human element. What do you think might have led this dealer down this path?
It's tough to say without knowing more about his personal life. But working in a casino, you're exposed to a lot of money day in and day out.
Yeah, that's got to be tempting.
Especially if you're struggling financially
Right.
or having personal problems.
It's a reminder that we all have our weaknesses, and for some people, the temptation might just be too much to resist.
It's true. Even in a glamorous, exciting place like a casino, there are real people with real problems.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in all the glitz and glamour and forget that.
And it's important to remember that this is just one case. It doesn't mean that all casino employees are dishonest.
Of course not. But it does raise some interesting questions about the psychology of gambling, both for the players and for the people who work in the industry. Like, what is it about casinos that creates this environment where people might be more likely to take risks or even do things that are illegal?
That's a great question, and one that researchers have been trying to answer for years. There's a whole lot of research on the psychology of gambling addiction. And some of those same factors might be at play in situations like this.
So it's not just about greed or a lack of morals. There could be deeper psychological factors involved.
Absolutely. Things like impulsivity, the thrill of risk-taking, even the belief that you can beat the odds. These can all influence people's behavior in casinos.
It's like the whole atmosphere is designed to tap into those instincts and make you feel like you can win big.
Right. And that's part of the appeal. But it also means you have to be careful not to get carried away.
So it's all about finding that balance between enjoying the excitement and being responsible.
Exactly.
So we've really dug deep on this story. We've talked about the legal side, the security measures, the psychology of it all.
And we've touched on some really interesting questions about trust security and how technology is changing the world of casinos.
It's been a fascinating conversation, but before we wrap things up, I want to bring it back to our listeners and leave them with something to think about.
Sounds good.
This whole story really highlights the importance of being informed and aware, even when you're in an environment that's supposed to be fun and carefree. But it also makes you wonder how much of this applies to our everyday lives outside of the casino.
That's an interesting thought, I think. There are definitely some parallels.
Yeah.
We trust a lot of different systems every day. Banks, online stores, social media. And just like casinos, those systems can be vulnerable to hacking, fraud, even just human error.
So it's not just about being careful in a casino. It's about being smart and aware in all parts of our lives.
Exactly. It's about knowing the risks, taking precautions, and being careful about who and what we trust.
Yeah, it's easy to get complacent and assume everything's safe and secure. But this story definitely reminds us that we can't just take things for granted.
Right. And we need to be proactive about protecting ourselves. Strong passwords, being careful about what we share online, even just being aware of our surroundings. There are things we can all do to stay safe.
It's like we need to be a little skeptical, not in a cynical way, but in a way that helps us ask questions and make good decisions.
That's a great way to put it. We need to think critically about who we trust and where we put our faith.
So this case, even though it's about a specific incident in a casino, it really does have some bigger lessons for us.
It shows us that security isn't just about physical stuff like cameras and guards. It's also about being aware, being informed, and making smart choices.
Well said. This deep dive has been a fascinating look at not just casinos, but also the bigger ideas of trust, security, and personal responsibility.
It's been great talking about this with you. I hope our listeners found it interesting and thought-provoking.
Me too. It's amazing how one story like this can lead to so many different conversations and really get you thinking.
That's what makes a good deep dive so great. You start with one thing and end up exploring all kinds of connections.
Absolutely. And to everyone listening out there, we hope this deep dive gave you some things to think about. Maybe even inspired you to take a closer look at the systems you trust in your own life.
Stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe out there.
And hey, if you ever find yourself at a poker table, maybe keep a little closer eye on those chips. Thanks for joining us.